Hi, I'm Dave June and this is Learn to Paint. Today we're going to be painting this snow-capped mountain scene. There's a lot of trees in this one, but they're not hard to make. And the waterfall is beautiful. It adds so much to this scene. It just draws your eye right back there. And this flowing river that comes out to the foreground just takes the viewer right into the scene. I love mist and I love painting mist and fog, and it's such an easy thing to do with this method. The mountains are fast and they give great results. I get so excited when I get to paint a scene like this. I love painting water too, and it's not that difficult if you just let go and let the brush do the work. You'll see what I mean as we come along. We have a limited palette today. This is a Cad Yellow Pale, Titanium White, Prussian Blue, Dyke Brown, and Alizarin Crimson. Pretty limited on our brush set as well. We have a 1-inch brush, just a normal brush. We have this fan brush. This is a 4, but a 3 or 4 fan brush, about 1 inch wide or so, works for this particular size painting. This is a flat brush. It's number 10, but you can go with anything that's about this wide is fine, about 3/4 of an inch wide or 5/8. We have our palette knife, painting knife. If you don't have this type, any kind of palette knife or painting knife potentially will work. You just have to work it differently possibly when we're doing the mountains, but you can use just about anything that's flat if it has a handle on it. And then our little liner brush. That's a number 2 liner. Probably just sign with that. It's about all we're going to do with it, I believe. We have a 10 by 20 canvas. I like the wide format for this particular scene. That's the way I designed this scene, so that we get plenty of room to the sides for trees, but we still have room for that river. And it doesn't have to be real tall. We just need to keep the mountains shoved up to the top and the trees as we're working down. We've got to leave enough room for our river to give that plenty of room to show up. Well, let's get started. Let's put a light coat of white base coat medium over our canvas. This is going to give us a nice thin layer for doing blending, and it really helps when we're painting the mist and a lot of the other elements as well. So I've got white base coat medium here. It's very thin, as you can see. It runs. And I'm going to take the 1-inch brush and just load some into that. And when you put this on, you want to distribute it onto the canvas quite thin. This isn't like painting a house or a wall. This is more of a scrub to make a very thin layer, much like a film. Just a very thin film over the canvas. And I want to get it completely distributed, covering every part of the canvas. As you can see, a little goes a long way. If you just keep moving it around, I'm really pushing hard. You can see that. I'm not doing this. I'm actually dragging the whole side of the bristles across the canvas. Then to see if I've covered well, I'm getting my head right down here near the canvas, my eyes, and looking across so I can see the glare from the lights on this. And if it's dull, that means there's no medium there. And all I got to do is go back and hit those spots. So there we go. If you want to check, see if you have enough, just take your finger and do that. It should look sort of like a fingerprint. If there's much more than that, you might want to take a paper towel and just wipe it off, because that's a bit too much. So that looks good. Now we're going to take our palette knife and just make us some sky color here. So I'm going to take some of this titanium white and a little bit of the Prussian Blue, want a sky color that's, I would say, a medium to, yeah, medium blue. We don't want anything too light. We want some clouds to show up. And we want the mountains to show up against the sky. So as you can see, I'm just grabbing a little more blue until I get something that I feel good about. If I get too much blue in, I'll just add a little more white. That's pretty good right there. So just wipe that off. Grab my 1/8 brush and pull it in like this just to load it. And I'm going to start in the corners. I don't want to do a crisscross stroke like this is fine. I want to leave some spots with no paint so that we'll have some natural cloud areas, just illusion of clouds. I'm going to grab a little bit more of the Prussian Blue because I want it darker in the corners, and even a little more than that. I'm not going into the whole pile here. I'm just going to work right there on the edge. And I'll just work in here, but as I come across, I'll stop in the middle. I won't put too much in the middle. Grab a little more and come over here. Just a touch more up here. I like those corners to be a little darker. What that does, it draws your eye to the middle. You don't have to put everything light. You can just do dark too, and then light against dark, dark against light. That's going to draw your eye to the middle by having the darker edges. Now I haven't even wiped my brush out. I'm just going to come on down here and just go across. And I'm getting the extra paint out of my brush is what I'm doing. And I'm coloring my canvas so that I don't have a pure white canvas down here. This will make it easier for me later. This paint is just mixing in with that white base coat medium that we used. Makes it really easy to apply the paint. Now that I've gotten that rubbed out, that's pretty clean enough to where I can blend up here. If I didn't get it all out, you take a paper towel, wipe it out. Now I'm going to very gently do some crisscross strokes up here just to soften this up. And as we do this, it's not very hard. I'm not pushing hard. If you push hard, you'll blend all your light spots out and everything will just become one solid, even color. And that's not really what I want. And then I will wipe my brush just a little bit, just to get any excess blue out of it that are hanging on there. And I'm going to take some pure white and just work in here and strengthen these clouds. Now notice how random I'm working here. I'm not trying to create like some sort of perfect cloud, but I'm just working in here to give my focus more toward the center. The mountains are going to be right here. They're going to drop on each side. So I just want a few little variations of white in here. And then if I don't have any more paint on my brush, I can go ahead and do kind of a crisscross. I can pull up like this very gently again. And that's pretty nice. And I'll just make sure everything else looks good. And I like that. I'll put that brush down. Now we're going to work on our mountains. Now we know the mountains are going to come, they're going to start up here pretty close to the top of the canvas, and they're going to come down into this area here. And then our water is going to start about here. This is our river that's going to come across in this general area here. So we have this much room for trees in here. In fact, the river will probably come down a little further, but that's close enough. So we're going to take this knife, I'm not even going to wipe it off, and we're going to create a mountain base color. Just something for the background of the mountain. This is going to get our shape. So we're going to take some white and some Prussian blue, some Dyke Brown, not as much Dyke Brown as Prussian Blue, and about the same amount of Alizarin Crimson as Dyke Brown. Just to kind of, all you're trying to go for is sort of a bluish gray. Might put that a little bit darker. All I did was grabbed a little more Prussian Blue, a little more Dyke Brown. So that's getting there. Let's take a little more of the Dyke Brown and the Prussian Blue. I believe that'll work. Just flatten it out. Take your knife and push it up in it like that, just flat against the palette. And you get a nice little roll of paint on the end of the knife. Now we got to decide where our mountains are going to be. I'd prefer not to have a peak directly in the center of the canvas. So I'm going to move over to one side a little, and I'm going to say I'm going to have a peak right in here. I'm just going to drag it like this and across like that. And then if I want to, I can turn it a little bit like that. This is your mountain range. Do that same thing again with scraping up some paint. And I think I'll just roll this up like this and do like that. Look at that. Man, before you know it, we're going to have a mountain range right here. Now I'm going to come across. I'm actually going to come over a little bit more. This one's going to be a little bit taller. I'm going to make it, it's not quite so pointed. A little more paint. I don't want this one to come up as high as that one. These are our two major peaks. Everything else is going to be below those. Again, we want our focus to be toward the middle of this. We're drawing our eye, comes in through the river to the waterfall, and then up the mountain and out. That's the way we want our eye to go. Just pull this down. And you know, you just try not to get much below there. It doesn't matter if you do a little bit, but we're just working in this area right here. We don't need to drag this paint all the way down to this. We're going to actually lighten that area up. Now I can work on this side. I've already got the start of this one, and I can just come across here and pull something a bit more flat so it doesn't mimic this. Try to keep away from patterns when you're painting nature. Nature doesn't have many patterns unless you're painting a beehive. Random is more believable, and that's what we're going for, authenticity here. All right, then you step back. Be sure to step back. Take a look at your painting. See if you like it. I think that peak looks a little skinny. I don't know about that guy. Just gonna grab a little more paint. I think I want to change that somehow. Fatten it up a little or something. Now I don't want this angle and this angle to be exactly the same. So I'm actually going to make this one straighter. That's just, again, to keep from having things looking identical. Not that there's not mountains out there that are twin peaks or something, but that's not what I'm going for today. If you want that, you go right ahead. You might paint a specific mountain range. This is not. This is Dave's mountain range. All right, I like that. That's a good start. We'll make this a little taller here. Yeah, there, now I'm happy. Okay, I'm gonna wipe my knife off on a paper towel, and we're going to create our snow color. So that's why I want that paint off of my knife. So we'll go, we'll just work right here next to this background mountain color. And I want to take some of this titanium white. I got a little bit of blue on that. Get that off of there. And a speck of red of this Alizarin Crimson. I mean, a little bit. This stuff is strong, so it doesn't take much. Same method. Pull it toward you. Shove your knife into it. Get a little roll of paint. You don't need much paint yet. So we're going to start. I'm going to split this peak. The sun's coming from the left, hitting the snow. We're going to put the bright snow on this side, the shadow snow on the right. So I've just landed my knife right here and pull it and let it break like that. Those little crevices are the bomb right there. We'll put shadow over there. I'm going to do something similar here, but I want it to be a little different. So I'm actually going to pull down like this, and then I'm going to have to come back and get more paint to come on across here. Grab me a little more. I've got a little blue in that on my knife, but that's okay. It'll mix in with this white and it'll be all right. I don't always want to do that, but it doesn't hurt to have some here and there. It just makes more variety in my snow. I can always go over it if I want to, because I might actually add a little peak right in here, like this. If you'll notice, I'm just about touching the canvas with my knife to make it flat. If you hold it out perpendicular to the canvas, it's not going to work too well. You're not going to get any results. Continuing to grab more paint, load that knife. I'm going to say here's a peak in here. And didn't quite have enough paint on the end there, so I'm going to have to mix up some more paint. There, now we've got some paint though. We're going to mix some more up in just a moment. Let's go ahead and mix up. Remember, it's just titanium white and just a speck of this Alizarin Crimson. What we're doing, we're just giving this white a little bit of warmth. That's too much. Put a little more white in it. It's easy to get too much of that crimson. But it's easy to pick up some more white and put it in there. Same method. Let's just keep working on out here. The lighter you touch, the more skips you're going to have in your paint, which is a good thing. Now I'm going to keep this less vivid than the center. This is where all the action is going on. As we said, we want the viewer's eye to go here. So I'm actually just going to, this has got some blue on my knife now from when I was scraping. I'm just going to go back over this a little bit, just dull it down a little bit. Easy to do. Didn't have to go find any paint. I just, what's on my knife, I used to just dull that down a little, take away a little bit of that. And we'll actually strengthen this in here a little more in a moment to bring it up with some pure white probably. Let's work on the other side a little. I'm going to bring something in here. and pull it down like that. More paint. Let's see, I think I'll put a peak right in here. I'm wiping my knife when I don't want that blue on the knife. Grab some more paint. I'm going to put something right in here. Wipe my knife. Come back over here. This is a lot of paint. I think I'll start that again. A little less paint. As I said, I want less attention over here, so we'll just spread the paint a little bit thinner there. Now, I'm going to do a couple more things to the mountains, but before I do, I'm going to take this 1-inch brush and I'm going to just soften the bottom of this. This is going to be the beginnings of our mist. All I'm doing is taking this brush, I'm pushing in, I'm not dragging it down, I'm not trying to stamp it, I'm tapping it in here. And what it's doing, it's bending those bristles, as you can see. The other thing I'm doing is I'm working up and down with my line. I don't want this mist to be one solid line. I'm actually letting my brush creep up in places. The reason I wanted to do that is because I want to extend my snow down a little further. And I wanted to get that dark softened first. So I'd like to put another peak in here somewhere. Like that. This is just going to make my range a little taller. And then I think I'm going to drag this on across here. Yes. Now we're starting to come together on the snow. And as I said, I'm going to grab just pure white. I've got it pulled out here a little bit, so I'm just going to grab some of that. I want to strengthen this, especially this one. It's a little weak. So I'm going to add some more white in here. This is going to draw our eye up here more. Now I'm going to have to do that again, get a little more paint. I think I'll actually turn my knife a bit like this, just so I can hit the top of this. Because I'm liking that, so I don't really want to mess it up. I think I'll even add a little more in there like that. I like it. It's nice. Okay, I've just wiped my knife off. Now we're going to make our shadow color. This is just blue and white. So we'll take some titanium white. And I can work over here in this snow color I had. And just grab some Prussian Blue. I want this lighter than this, which was my mountain base color, and of course darker than my snow, my sunny snow. So we're going for sort of a light blue. I'm thinking that. It doesn't have to be perfectly mixed. If you've got some streaks of white in it, that's fine. It might even work to your advantage. Now I've done the same thing with a little roll of paint. And I'm going to come up in here and just apply some here on what would be my shadow side of the mountain. And I'm letting it skip so we get those cracks and crevices up there. Get some more. We'll go ahead and do this one. How's that? Could drop down here and take care of that, and then down there I'll just scrape a little off. We'll work over here. Decide where you want peaks and valleys, shadow and light. As long as your light's coming from one direction, don't get mixed up and have it coming from some of them from this way and some of them from that way, unless you got a planet with two suns. Or a really big spotlight. Keep it all coming from one direction, so it's believable and authentic. Just work our way on across. Now, as we get over here, this is not as important, but we can add a little in here. Let's work on the other side. I know I want something here. I'm going to pull a little in right in here. Might add a little more there in a moment. Let's keep working across here. I'm actually going to leave that dark in there. I think that looks good. Pull this in, pull that in. What do you think? I like it. I think it's looking very good. I may bring some more down just a little lower. So I'll have to mix up some more. That's close enough. There we go. Just want to pull in a little more down here. And then I'm gonna get a little more of the snow color. Just want to enhance that. I'm going to pull that on down like that. Wipe my knife. Got all that blue on it. And let's see here. We've got a peak here. I'm going to enhance that a little bit. There we go. Oh, I like that. I like it a lot. That's exciting. I hope you get as excited about this as I do. Now I'm going to feather this out or soften this, mist it up. And to do that, I'm just going to grab a little white. I want to lighten this up down here, make sure that where this mountain base is, it's pretty light. And I can start, I don't want to take all that out, so I'm going to leave that. And then I can work up over here. That's pretty dark over there, so I'll grab some more white. Not too much. We're not trying to make it pure white. We're going to have trees in here that are fairly light because of aerial perspective, atmospheric perspective. They're off in the distance. They're lighter, and so we want them to show up against the mountain. Well, then what's behind them has to be either lighter or darker, and we don't want a dark mountain, so we're lightening it up. And I like that. That's good. Man, that's exciting. It's so fun to make a mountain range like that. Let's just go over what we're doing here again. We're going to have this river, this waterfall, start in here. It's going to come down. The river is going to be right in this area right here. So we're just mapping that out again. Now the river, as it comes out, of course, it's going to get wider as it comes toward the viewer and end up very wide here at the front of the painting. But my point is, we just want to get an idea where our trees start and where they stop, so we don't get too crowded and we end up with no room for a river. That's what happens usually, so keep that in mind. And to make our trees, we'll mix up some paint. All right, now I've got this blue here that we were using for the base of our mountain, and we can start with that so we don't keep making more paint piles. And as a matter of fact, I can clean this off a little. If you get a mess, just clean it off, wipe it up, whatever you got to do. Keep things in a decent shape for you so you don't get too messy. So we're going to use mostly blue, and I'm going to make a fair amount of paint here because we're going to keep changing it as we come forward, but we can work off of the background color. So we're going to take some Prussian Blue and a little bit of Dyke Brown there, and a little bit of this Alizarin Crimson. That's way too dark because our background trees are going to be light. So I'm just going to grab some more white. I'm going to pick up this white that I've had blue in. And I'm just going to keep lightening it. Now I'm not going to lighten all of that if I don't need it. I can lighten some of it, although it's going to take a fair amount of paint, so I may just lighten it all. So I'm just going to do that. We're getting there. I think I want a little more brown and a little bit more crimson so it doesn't look too blue. I want a pretty dull blue. As we come forward, then the colors will be more vivid. Things off in the distance. You got all that mist back there, atmosphere. It's definitely going to be lighter and duller. Going to lighten this up a little bit more. Let's give that a shot. We can always adjust it. Take my fan brush. Now you just need paint out here on the ends. You don't need to lay it down and get paint all over this entire brush. So we know our trees are going to start right here in this area. We're going to have a layer of trees, some mist, and then another layer of trees, and then our river. And we know that these trees are going to go all the way across. They're not going to stop for the waterfall. That's the second set. But I want to start them right in here. Now all I'm doing is touching the end of that brush to the canvas. I'm pulling down ever so slightly. Now, this is the beginning. Notice they are not straight as an arrow. It looks like you took a lawnmower and cut them off. Make sure there's variation, more of that rhythm, that syncopated rhythm in this tree line. You can even drop it down a little, but actually I'm going to come up a little. I've got room here, so I'm just going to come up as I come across, because I'm going to have another row of trees that's going to come down in front of this. So we'll just keep doing this. I'm starting to run out of paint, but over here it's not as important because it's going to fade out anyway. Remember, we're going to start another set of trees here and come down to about here. So I want to leave room for that, and we're going to soften the bottom of these. So now I've got to get more paint. You may run out sooner than that. Make sure you get a lot of paint, but only on the ends, so you don't need it all over it. And now we're just going to start here and go this way. If you get it real broad like that, you might have a little too much paint on it, but you can just go back over them and sharpen them up a bit. You want some pointy looking things out there. They don't have to be sharp, but they ought to be some points on them. They should connect together for the most part. You don't want to leave huge holes in here. Not everywhere. Then it looks like fence posts. We don't need that. Now once I get over here, we're going to have another row of trees in front of that, so we can stop there. But I'm liking that. So let's just put that brush down for a moment. We'll take our 1-inch brush. I'm going to actually turn it horizontally this time and soften the bottom of this, because I don't want to do away with the entire tree. So I want to stay down low. Same process we did on our mountain base. Just tap fairly hard. As you get over here, just run out. I'll just soften this on out over here to where it just pretty much looks like the mist is taken over right there, because we're going to, as I said, put another set of trees in front of that. Now, same thing applies that I did earlier. I'm going to take a little bit of white and just brighten this up a little right in here, so that our mist, fog, whatever you want to call it, is going to show up. And try to keep this from being real uniform. See, I've got a little bit harder, a little more white right there. That's good. Also, it goes up and down a little bit. I can even enhance that a little right there so that my mist is not level. There's certainly times when it is, but I want a little variation here, a little variety. There's hills out there, you know. This isn't just one broad side of a hill. It's got little undulations. So we'll go with that. That's pretty good. Now we're ready for a second set of trees, but before we do, let's figure out where our waterfall is going, because that's an important part of this. So my waterfall is going to be about 6 inches off the end, and you don't have to measure it, but I'm just going to show you. So, and I'm actually going to drop down here out of the waterfall area. Let me grab a little paint, but there's about 6 inches. The waterfall is going to be up here, but this is my falls. So this next set of trees, I don't want to get beyond that point right there, because I want some mist surrounding the falls, and I want another set of trees in front of it here. So the waterfall is going to pretty much be behind this. Let's see, here's the river. It's going to be there. So the waterfall is going to be up here, and it's going to come across like that. So I'm just doing a little quickie sketch with paint here, just to give me an idea where I'm going to be. And you're saying that is not a waterfall. Nope, that's next to the waterfall. But it gives me an idea where I'm going. I like to know on something like that, a little bit of where I'm going. Now we've got to mix up some more paint, because this is going to be just slightly darker than the paint we just applied. So to do that, I'll just take a little more of this Dyke Brown, a little more of the blue. Let's mix that in together. Working with that same pile of paint that I was working with on the first set of trees. A little bit more. I'm going to put a little more of the crimson into that, which will also darken it. Now that's darker than what we had, so that should be pretty good. I may want to go a little bit more with the blue and a little bit of yellow into that, because it doesn't hurt if we start seeing just a touch of green. I like it. Let's try it. Same brush, didn't wash it, didn't even wipe it out. Just load your brush by pulling it to you. And I'll just leave this off right here. I know I want to end up down about here as far as this way. So I'm going to start up here. I want to leave some room for my mist to show. And as I'm coming down here, I'm going to let this drop down toward the falls a little. If you'll notice, I turned my brush over so I could get paint off the other side. But pull it again. Keep going here. Use the same method of up and down. Make sure you get a lot of variety. Usually, especially if you're a beginner, if you think you're doing enough, you're not. If you think you're doing too much, that's probably just about right as far as this variation, this up and down. I tend to see people that they think they're making a variation, and all they're doing is this right here. And it doesn't look too attractive, does it? So you want to give yourself some up and down. Of course, the closer the trees are to you, the darker they are, and there's a little bit more variety to them because they're a little bigger. And then over here, I'm just going to soften that out there. Now, because we are coming down to here, we're going to soften this. And I can just stand back and look at that. I think that's pretty nice. Now this one is going to keep going as we come over here. This set of trees are actually going to come right over and work right on up in front of this one like this. So there's like a bigger mountain hill over here. Look how easy this is. Then we're going to put another set of trees in front of this, so I don't want to come down too far. That's pretty good right there. Then we're going to work on the other side here. We're going to end up with something right in here. We know we got to cut in front of that. And we know we want to end up down here at the waterfall. I'm not going to put these trees in here yet because we're going to let those come up above the falls a little. So I don't want to put them in just yet. But I can start right here. I say above the falls, above the river at the top of the falls there. I think you know what I'm saying. And as I come across, I'm going to just give a lot of variety here. Once again, making sure that you have trees in front of trees. You see little holes in here. That's good, little sky holes, if you will, or little gaps in the trees. They don't have to be solid. I believe we're going to do some more softening here. We have the 1-inch brush. We're going to we'll go ahead and soften it, and then we're probably going to add some more white to this as well. And I want to soften it right in here because that falls where it's going to be. I want it to be misty around the falls, so I'm just going to add some in there. Some mist. It just gets lost. That's what we want, some of those lost edges. Okay, we'll finish that in a few minutes. Obviously that is dark. I'm going to wipe my brush out a little bit with a paper towel. Get some pure white. Of course, it doesn't stay pure. I'm just going to tap it in here. Let's grab a little more. Notice I've got my brush horizontal, then I turn it vertical some. This is darker paint. We're picking up more of it, so I'm having to grab more white than I did before. And you're going, Dave, you're down here where the river's going to be. No big deal. We're going to take white and go over that and make this river just amazingly pretty. It's so easy to do. Get a little more white. I want this to be, this is our river running right along here, so I want to get this fairly light, you know, especially in places where the mist is coming up off the river. Once it gets out here, this will actually come down. So I'm going to add some more trees in here, but over here along the river there, I want a fair amount of fog or mist. Okay, we're going to work on our river and falls for a moment. So I'm taking this flat brush, just want to wipe it out. I had paint on it earlier. You don't have to wash it, just wipe it off. We haven't washed a brush yet. And we're just going to use some pure white. Now you don't need a lot, but you do need it on the ends of the bristles. So I'm just going to pull, that's a lot right there. I'm going to back off of that some. I just want to get a little on each side, about like that. Let's get a dark spot, there we go. And this will take 2 hands probably. I have to steady my arm. And we knew that we were going to be about 6 inches over, which is right about in here. And the river itself is going to be up here about 3 inches. So I'll just scrape me, that's a 3, top of the falls somewhere up above that little dark line there, which is from the canvas about a little less than 5, about 4 3/4. Just if you want to know, if you're using a 10 by 20. If you're using anything else, obviously your measurements will be different from the edges. That should go without saying. So I've got my loaded brush. I know I'm coming to about here, and I'm just gonna ease in a very thin line across here. Now keep in mind, this is foreshortened. We're looking across the water. Actually, we're not even seeing all of it. We're just seeing where it's jumping up out of the creek, out of the river. So we just want a little bitty hint of a water back there of the river. And then I'm going to load a little more. Can have a little heavier now because we're going to do our falls. Try to stay out of that corner for a moment. This falls, it comes out and down. It's not just a straight line. So depending on what time of year it is, how much water is coming over this thing. But I'm just gonna, yeah, you can see that. I'm just touching, barely touching the canvas. And what I'm doing is letting this drag. See those little jagged things? That's the paint as it's dragging off of my brush. Now, you may not get it at first, but don't fret. Just keep working on it a little bit at a time. If it gets really bad, you can scrape all that out, mist it out, and do it again. You don't have to think of it as a failure because really you can't fail with this method. Now, if I get too far in the back, we're going to put some dark stuff here along the back of the falls, but there's going to be some trees in here, so I want them to be able to come in front of the water. And then I'm just going to just a little bit down here at the bottom. I'm going to let that expand a little. Keep in mind that's way off in the distance, so we don't need a whole lot of detail, but enough to make it interesting. Now up here, this obviously the water doesn't come out and do like that. You know, it's not a right angle. So I'm going to do just a little bit of a rounded corner there, kind of like that. If you don't, you can take your brush or a clean brush and push that back, or your palette knife, just get that corner off of there if you end up with a corner. That's a little bit sharp there. What I can do too, if I want to cheat this back in here, I can just raise my river a little bit. And keep coming across. I think I'll raise it a little over on this side anyway. Yeah, I like that better. That's pretty good. We're going to cover up a lot of that river up here anyway. But I think I'm going to raise it on this end a little more. But most of that's going to go away. Now I can, if I want to get rid of some of that white where it's so heavy, I just wiped my brush off on my palette. And I can just pick this back up. Pick up some of that excess. Just so I don't have a big mess right there. So that's got the general gist of my waterfall in. Now, as I'm doing this, I can come across with my river too, before we work on more trees. So same stuff, just pure white right now. And let's figure out where our river's going to go here. It's going to end up about center of the canvas where it comes across when it starts working its way out. So here's center of the canvas, left to right, somewhere right in here. So what I'm going to do is just say this is fairly level. Now it does drop a little as it comes across, gravity being what it is. So as I'm coming across, I'm just going to drop it down a little bit here, like that. There's a start. We're just roughing this in. Now, when you're doing wet on wet and you want to apply more paint, you just have to get more on your brush. In a case like this is sort of an impasto effect. We're getting thick paint here. So I'm pulling it through a thicker part of the pile, And I'm letting it get on the end. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like you can there. But there's a lot of paint out there. So I got to be really careful when I put it on here. So that's why I'm going to hold my arm up here to help me. And I'm going to actually start a little higher. And then I'm going to drop down a little. Think of it as stair steps. You don't want just a straight line from right to left. You want the walls, the water is going to be falling down. And if you want it to look authentic, make it do that. I'm going to grab a little more paint, getting a lot on the end again. And I'm just going to keep dropping down here. Now I may have that a little high over there, now that I'm looking at this. So what I might do is I might have to pull a little of that off up there, but that's not a problem. I'm going to go with that right now. And as I said, I'm about halfway here anyway, so I'll probably just start softening this out right here. There, see that? Look at that, gone. How about that? Now if I want a little more interest down here along the river, I could take this brush. This has still got some paint in it. This is that fan brush, okay? And I can just do this, barely touching it. And this takes a little more finesse, but it can be done. We're going to start with trees down through here anyway. But this puts like trees in front of trees. We're going to soften these out a lot. There's not going to be much visible. So I'm taking this brush. Now I've got to be real careful here, or I'm going to have bristles in my river. But I'm just softening this out barely, just to give it a little flavor that there's some trees in there, ever so slight, but there they are. Now when we come down to the water, it's got to blend out. I may have to use a different brush on that. I can take this brush, this fan, or this number 10 flat, and I can just soften this out with that. Since I can get closer to my river. I'm barely touching the canvas. If I touch it hard, I'm going to leave these lines, so I want to get rid of those. But I like that. There. Now we want to take trees in front of this river here so that it's hidden. Obviously right now it looks like it's floating in midair. So there's a couple of things we're going to do to that. Even before we put the trees in, I want to take this flat brush, which I wiped it out a moment ago when we were working down here. And I want a very dark color wherever the falls are. I'm just going to, right on the palette with my brush, just take some brown and some blue. It's almost a black. If it's too dark, I can lighten it up, but I think this will work because there's a lot of paint on the canvas now. So what I'm talking about here, I'm basically going to put the side of a mountain in here before I put my trees in here. I don't need to come way over. I'd like to leave that a little jagged right there. Now that's not quite dark enough, so I'm going to grab some more of the brown and put in that. You just want a dark value. This is mostly going to be hidden, but what's not hidden should be in shadow. That's what I'm doing here. I'm having to lay my brush down. What you could do if you want, and you have to do this judiciously, but you could take a little bit of paint thinner, which is the first time, just dipped it in the corner of my brush in the paint thinner and put it on here. Just thins the paint just a little bit. I'm going to grab a little more of these two colors, a little more paint thinner, just a drop or two. And now that'll go on easier without just piling paint on. Yeah, see that? That makes it easier. It's right along the edges I'm mostly concerned with, because the rest of this is going to be pretty solid in trees. But there you go. While I'm at it, I'm going to do the same thing down here along the base of the river. I'm just going to drag my brush across here though. like that. Okay. As I said, there'll be other trees and things in here, but give yourself an advantage by doing that, making it easy on yourself. Now we are placing trees in here. They're going to be a little bit darker. It's actually this kind of gets lost between these trees and this next set of trees in front here. But I just want to go ahead and put something in here just to get started. So what I'll do is take my knife. We'll grab some of this. We'll just take this stuff right here. I'm going to darken this up a little bit. This is what I was making for underneath my waterfall there. So I'm just mixing this up. I want to add some yellow into this. We'll start getting a little green with our trees. Of course, yellow and blue make green. Still off in the distance, so I don't need it too green yet. Just a shade, just a smidgen. Alrighty, I'm going to pull this fan brush through that and load it. I'm just going to tap right in here. Just let it come up above the falls a little. Not everywhere. You don't want to destroy your river, but something like that. And that just gets lost back there, doesn't it? I could take a little more. You decide how much you want there. And while we're at it, we'll just put a little down here as well on the lower river. Not much, because we're going to put some different types of trees down here. These are a little closer to us, so we could put a little in there. That shoves that waterfall further back by doing that. And if I want, I can even take a little of this and let it come over here in front of the fall like that. Just don't do it too much. Down here you can do a little. Okay, so some of it's hidden behind some branches. I'm just going to let this come on over here. And this is getting lost over here. Not a lot of things happening. You know, our focus is over here. Our next step will be to put the base of the river in here. Just a base color, sort of a bluish green. We have this, but we're working with the trees with this, so I think I'll just make another little bit of paint here. I'll take some white right here, because this is going to have more blue in it. A little more yellow. But I'm not putting in the Alizarin Crimson and the Dyke Brown. That gets me a good starting point. Just take that flat brush. All we're doing now is just doing sort of an outline of the river. We're not worried about the white. Now we know we want to end up down in here somewhere. And on this side, we want to end up just a little bit beyond the falls here. So something like this. We know we want to end up there. As this river comes out, the way it's going to work, you're going to come out almost flat here. And then it's going to start really cutting across here like this. Just rough it in, then you can refine it. Take a little more of that. And as it comes out this side, depending on how far we go, I think we're going to start it turning right about here. It's going to turn pretty quick. It's not going to follow that path. It's going to be almost vertical right through here. And then as it comes down, it's going to really widen out, something like that. Try to keep it Nice and jagged along the edge. And then you can just fill in some of this. You don't have to fill it all in, but this is our base coat, so this will be good. Oh, wrong one. It's okay. It won't hurt anything. And we'll just go right on over here. Just rub that in, scrub it in a little bit. Don't put a lot of paint there. Don't put it thick. Just scrub it in there. That's generally how our river's going to flow, right there. If you don't get it right, don't fret about it. You'll just keep working at it. Try not to fret. And this is a fretter telling you. I'm the world's biggest fretter. Just going to strengthen those edges a little. Now I'm just touching up. I'm refining. I want to see, is this really the shape I want here? You know, do I want it to come out a little more in here? I don't want to go too far, but I can cover it up with trees if I do. Now that we know where our river generally is going to be, we're going to put some more trees over here, another layer of trees that are they're just going to sort of meld into these here. And then we'll have some more fog down here, mist, and then the foreground trees here. So we're going to make these trees about the same color as those because they're about the same distance from the viewer. So I've got that pile here still that I saved. Pull that fan brush through it, decide where the top is going to be, probably somewhere up here. These can be quite jagged. Actually, quite jagged. Because they are a little closer, they're taller, and you can see more detail. Pull some more paint, and as I'm coming across, as I said, this is going to blend into these other trees over here. So I'm just going to do something like this, and they may even just tie right into these right here. Like that. And we'll soften these out a little bit. But I'm not going to have as much fog over here. This is getting closer to you, so the mist isn't quite as visible. So I'm actually going to come on down in here mostly, like that. And we're going to soften it out there to make some mist. So we'll have a layer and another set of trees in there. We can take our brush, this 1-inch brush, and we can soften this up right through here. And I can even turn it on its edge if I want to soften it out a little bit. I do want to soften where they come together, so it's not real obvious. Got a couple of bristles here to get rid of. There we go. Continue to soften this out. Just make sure you leave enough room. These are pretty tall trees, so we don't want to get way up in them with our mist. Then over here, I'm going to go ahead and soften this side out over here. This will probably end up being pretty solid, so I don't believe I'm going to need to soften that out. Do believe I'm going to wipe my brush out. And I'm going to take a little more white, and I'm just going to lighten this up over here. When I put this next set of trees in, I want you to be able to see it up against those trees. To do that, we'll lighten that up a little. And I may just do the same thing right over in here. Because there's a lot of mist coming off of those falls right in here, so we'll just make it happen. Pretty fun to make your own world, isn't it? I'm having a ball. Now we're going to work on some foreground trees, or some of them. So I'm going to wipe my knife off, and I'm going to work in this pile here. I'm going to take Prussian Blue. Let me scrape this up so we don't have... I'll leave my river alone there. We might need some of that. But we'll take the Prussian Blue and some of this Dyke Brown and Alizarin Crimson. We're going for a quite dark value. All right, a little more brown, a little more crimson. Let's try that. Now this brush, I'm using the fan brush again. It's pretty well saturated in that light color, so I'm just going to take that paper towel and wipe that rascal out. Okay. Same thing with our brush. Load it by pulling it through the paint. Notice I'm not pushing hard and getting it all over the side. Don't need to. We just need it on the ends. Now, I've got a lot going on over here in terms of variety because things are closer to us. But I do know I want another layer, and it's going to be somewhere right in here. And I'm going to let that come all the way down to the edge of the canvas. I've already run out of paint. Got to get more. Another load of paint. And I'm just going to work this on in here like this. This is sort of a background. We're going to put a few other trees in here in front of these that are a little more defined. But I want something in here just to give us some shadow color. That's basically what this is for the most part. We're going to work on our river again in a moment, so don't worry if you get trees in your river. We'll take care of that in a minute. And I'm just going to get over in here and tap some trees in right in here. I can even hold my brush at a bit of an angle so I can get that down there. I can also turn it like this. I may soften the tops of some of these so they don't show up too much. Now that's a trick so that our eye doesn't get drawn over here. We want our focus to be over here, so I don't want these too different than what's behind them. So we'll do this right here. Just soften them out a little bit. That was easy, wasn't it? Over here on the left, I'm going to take some more of this. I'm going to add some yellow to that. I'm just going to turn it a bit of a green. We're actually going to make some more defined trees here. So what I'm going to do is pull that brush like that. Same thing. I just want to make a tree. This is a more of a defined fir tree or evergreen. So I'm going to start somewhere right in here. And this is just a shape. This gives me a guide as to where the center of my tree is. Then I'm pulling it again. Now, I'm not going to start right there. I'm going to drop down a little bit. I'm taking the very corner of the brush and I'm just touching. And then as I come down rather, I'm obviously coming out further from the trunk, this being the trunk, or what represents the trunk right now. I had to turn my brush over because I had paint on both sides, but I'm running out of paint right there. Don't keep going. You're just wasting your time. Grab more paint and you can just fill it on in. As you come down the tree, obviously there's not a lot of light down here, so we want to fill that in. And if it's too straight, you don't like it, you can change that. But that's tree one. All right, I'm probably going to have to mix up some more paint in a moment. But let's say we want another tree right next to that one. As Bob Ross used to say, this tree needs a friend. What I'm doing here, if you want to see, I'm letting my brush, the corner of my brush, not the entire brush, but the corner bend. And I'm actually coming down like this with it. And when I do, it's leaving these nice brushy limbs. Let me just mix up a little more paint. We'll grab more of the blue, more of the brown, and the crimson, and the yellow. Go grab a little more yellow even. There we go. Fan brush. Load the paint. I want another tree. I don't want it to be down here, and I don't want it to be exactly this tall, and I don't want it to be the same distance apart. And I want it to pretty well fill in over the river, so I'm going to go right in here. And I say all that because I want it to be, again, natural. I want a lot of variety. This is almost a zigzag, but you don't want to get too patterny with that. But it is a bit of a zigzag. Once you get it in there, you can look at it if you want to tweak it a little bit. Just don't tweak forever. You'll end up messing up your nice work. Keep your tweaking to a minimum. And then I'm going to add another little old thing right in here, like this. That one doesn't really matter too much there. I destroyed the top, so I had to add it back in. There. Okay. We'll work on that a little more in a moment. We're going to put some in over here on the right. Same paint. Let's put one right in here. This just tells me where I'm going. That's why I'm putting that line down the middle. Just doing a little sketching with my brush. Load my paint. I want another one. I think I want it a little taller right here. So I think I'll do this. He's leaning to the right a little. That's good. They don't all have to be perfect. Excellent. We're just popping in these trees like nobody's business here. I think I'll put a little something right in here. And this has got to be small, so I can barely touch it like that. I don't want to obliterate my whole river. More paint. Do another something right here. And let's see, let's put a little something right over here. And we can fill in here along the river once we get the river finished up, so we won't worry too much about that down there. I think I'll put a little something right here. See, this isn't hard, and I don't want to get too careful with it because these are just old trees. They're all which way. I think I'll put a little something over here. Just come on up there. I'm going to fill in here. Just to get rid of some of this shadow color, I'll put more limbs down in here like this. Say, that's looking pretty good. Now, we've got to have some tops to some of these. So we've got this color here that we've been working with. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. Get my roll of paint again on my knife. You can see that. Try to let you see it. There it is. I'm going to extend these tops a little. I'm just going to plant my knife right there, the heel of it, and just drag up a little bit. And then I'll take this one here. I can do as many of these as I want. I don't have to do them all. And some of them you can go taller than others. That one's pretty good right there. Yeah. And then, now you run out of paint, you're going to have to grab more. So I'm going to grab another load of paint. And then you can just come in here and put some stuff in here. Like some of them can lean, don't lean a lot of them. Most of them are growing straight up, but this is just sticks and things that are growing off in the woods. It adds interest, fills in your forest without having to stand here for 3 days and paint. Got some dead stuff back there. That's what some of that is. You know how these beetles and things kill these trees. So just put a little stuff in here. Get creative with it. Some of this is going to be in the foreground right here. I'm going to pull my paint out again. I'm just going to pull a little stuff up in here like this. I don't want it everywhere, so if I get too much, that's easy to take care of. I'll show you that in just a moment. I'll just take that, another roll of paint. I want to strengthen those tops a little. And there we go. So, what I said a moment ago, if I get a little too much down here and I don't like it, just take that fan brush that's got that paint on it, just tap around. You can actually do that anyway. Make it look like it's hidden in behind some of those, that brush there, those limbs and things. Gets a little more realism to it. Now, if we want to put a trunk or two in here, we can do that with the same color, same knife. See, I've got tree limb and that's it. So we've got space in the middle of the tree. That doesn't make sense, does it? So we're going to put a, all I'm doing is taking that knife, same thing, scraping it up. Just like we did the tops, I'm just adding a trunk up the middle. And you can lay it over on its side if you want a wider trunk. So up here, I want it skinny, but as it comes down, I can lay it down and it makes it a little wider. I can also drag it around. Of course, see, the more you drag it around, the more it's going to disappear. But there you go. We have instant trunks. Now, they may be a little too much trunk, right? You're not going to see the whole trunk. Same thing. Take this fan brush and just tap away some of it. Try a little bit. Step back and see how it looks, because it doesn't take a lot to make this look different. I know I want that to show right there, but as I come down, I'll just wipe out a little of that. All I'm doing is tapping, just touching it. It's a very light stroke. Then I've got a very nice looking tree. We're going to do a little highlight on those in a little bit. I'd like to work on my river next. We'll be using this flat brush. I'm going to wipe it out again. And I'm going to start with just white right now, and then we'll work in some other colors. This is just to give me a start. You can think of this in steps because it's not all happening at once. Now I'm getting a lot of paint on my brush, especially as I come forward. This back in the background, I don't have to have much. But even back there, I want a fair amount of paint on my brush. And I've wiped out my river over here. I may just fill it back in a little by going over that. Now as I come across, as I was saying, I'm dropping down. I'm getting a lot of paint here, especially as we come out, so that I've got a lot of paint on my brush. Let me get down here in the dark more. You can see that. And even to the point where I might shove my brush into the paint like that and pick it up, scoop it up. There are places that I'll definitely do that. You may not see me do it, but if you need a lot of paint, and we do, because we want this water to really be choppy and look like it's flowing. So what I'm doing now is just stepping this down. Notice that I'm not doing this along there. I'm not doing that. That will not be the way water flows. Water is going to keep its level and it's going to come down in steps. So think of it as minute steps as it comes down the side of the river there and everywhere. But you're going to keep it horizontal, in other words, nice and level. I'm getting more paint. Now I'm coming down here. We can adjust this, but I'm coming down and pretty soon I've got to start back toward the right here, right? I'm not going to keep going left. This is where the curve in the river is. So what I'm doing here is just coming back. Now I can fill in with more limbs here in a moment if I need to, but we're going to put some shadows along the edge of the river, so I don't know that I'll need to put more limbs in, but we'll see. Now, we want lots of variations on both sides. This is going to keep coming down here. I think I'm going to come across like this. There's a roundedness to it, but it's pretty sharp. Grab some more paint. I've got some other color in there. You can see that, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm gonna get color in this, but I'm just outlining the basic shape of my water now. As I come across this right side, I want some areas to go right back in here like this. You know, we don't want that uniform edge. So I'm going to scoop up some paint. And I'm going to do another one down here. It's kind of a natural place right there where my dark didn't go quite all the way out to the river anyway. And we, as I said, we can adjust that if we need to. And then as I'm coming down here, just something like that. There. All right, we're starting to get a little bit of a river going in here. Should I leave that there? Maybe. Make people wonder what's under the water? I don't think so. We'll get rid of that in a moment. Now, before I add some more white in here, I believe I'm going to add some of the darker colors. At least one. And so I'm going to wipe my brush out. Now, if you had two flat brushes going here, you wouldn't have to do this. You could use one for dark and one for light. But I figure you might have a limited tool set, so you can do it with one. Now I've got this stuff going on here. I've also got this tree color, right? Well, that would actually make some great watercolor, some color in the water. So I've got white in my brush still. I wiped it, but it's still got white in it. So that's going to mix in with this, which is going to work fine, especially down here in the foreground. Look at that. I'm just going to scrape some in here. Now, I'm not brushing it on like this. Don't do that. You want this water to look alive, don't you? To make it look alive, you want to give it a lot of motion. And you do that by a very loose stroke. And when I say loose, I mean it's not a very controlled stroke. It's controlled in one sense because you know what you're doing with it. Even though you might feel like you don't right now, you will. And then in another sense, it is uncontrolled. It looks very natural. That's what we're trying to go for here. It's a very natural look. I'm not spending a lot of time on this river, am I? It's not necessary. In fact, sometimes you can spend too much time on a painting and kill it. In fact, I'd say most of the time you can spend too much time on a painting and kill it. Obviously, that depends on your style. If you're ultra realism, then yeah, you're going to be spending time on your painting. But this type of impressionistic, semi-realism doesn't require a lot of time. And that's one reason I like this method. It's quick. I've got me some color in there. I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to scoop up some of this. This also has this dark color in my brush, so that's mixing in. That's just going to give me yet another shade of color. I don't want to cover up all my initial green that we started with in the river, the bluish green, but I do want to get some flavors in here. You get at least 3 different shades of something and it's going to start looking pretty real as a rule. Now I'm running out of paint and I'm starting to have to drag my brush too much across my canvas. And that isn't what I'm trying to go for here. I'm trying to add paint without dragging up what's underneath it. So I've got to be careful. We're going to put some shadowy stuff in along the banks. As a matter of fact, we might as well go ahead and do that now. So we can do that with the brush. We can do that with the knife. But we're going to make it first. This is a very dark color. So I'm taking that initial color and I'm adding some Prussian Blue, a little bit of the brown, and a little bit of the crimson. So I'm making this nice dark shadow. Now I can start with my knife. So let's just take that and see what we can do. Same thing. I'm pulling it out. I'm pushing it up, getting that roll of paint right there. And again, I want to keep things horizontal, but I want some shadows in here along the river. Now what I'm doing is just lightly scraping across. And that's about all that I can get out of that. So I'm coming back for more. I don't want it everywhere necessarily. Like I wouldn't want to cover up that nice white right there. But right here in front of it, there would be a shadow. So I can put a little there, and I can step on up here in front of that one. And let it skip. You can come on out in the water. We will be out there some. Now as we go back, we don't want to keep that real dark. So I'm about as far as I'm going to go before I start lightening it up a little bit. But I can do the same thing over here. So we'll take this, bump this out right here. More of the paint. Get some more. We got a lot of shadow over here already, so I don't need as much over here. And that's about as far back as I want to go with that dark color. There. But while I have it, we can put some in up here in the foreground of the river itself. Now I'll just enhance some of this dark that I have in here, so I'm not going over all my light areas. A little bit more of that down in here. Keep this very random, and you can even drag it down like that in places. We'll do that with the white too. That's going to give us a lot of movement in the water. So I'm pretty good here. I'm just put a little skinny ones over here maybe. Oh, that's not too skinny, is it? We'll add a little something in there like that. That's good for now. Remember, we're not done. This is a process. One step at a time. So I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. I'll just grab this stuff here. I'll lighten that up a little. That's quite a bit, but there, that's pretty good there. Now I want to, right back in here, since we're changing the value of this. And the reason is it's further away. It is getting lighter as it gets further away. So we don't want to take this really, really dark and put it back here, especially against those light trees. That would look funny. I'm going to lighten it up a little more right here. And as I'm working back in here, eventually we'll just about work into nothing, but look at that. Again, I'm keeping my knife horizontal. We do not want this knife sloping. A little bit more. This doesn't all need to show up. The sun's hitting some of it. Some of it's, you got these little banks, and then some of it is got water going back in there, so we don't want to put shadows everywhere. However, I do want to put a little up in here. Just give this river an edge right in here. I may even put a few trees right in there in a moment, just to make sure it doesn't look like a river is going to fall off the edge. But I'm liking it. You liking it? I hope so. I hope you try this. I'd love to see your work. If you do try it, please send me a photo. You can find me on Facebook, David June. You can find me on my website, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I do need a little bit more of the darks out there, this mid-tone dark. So I'm just going to put a few in here. Now, these are fairly skinny. I don't need them real fat, although they could be because of some bigger rocks. These are rocks and things sticking up. Just all kinds of things going on out there. Yeah, look at that. My. This is starting to come together, y'all. Okay, I've got this brush. We had that river base color in that. So we want to get rid of that. I'm just going to wipe it out. We haven't washed the brush yet. Now, this is the deal where we're going to start scooping some paint. Now, some of this paint back here can be a little off-white, so I've got some stuff with other colors mixed in it here. I'm just going to scoop that up. And I want to add in a few things. Don't cover all your little pretty stuff. These are little lines, kind of like we just did with the knife, and you could use a knife to do that. Back there especially, but I don't think I'm going to. And then as I get into the foreground, it's going to get lighter. I'm just scooping some stuff up. We will use a knife in a moment for a few places, because I like it. Golly, that's looking good. Oh my. See, I get excited about this. I get excited. This is so fun, y'all. And let's just, now as we're coming forward, obviously our waves and things are getting bigger. I'm putting a lot of paint on the surface. It may not be too visible to you, but you can see it because of the way I'm scooping it up here. But this is pretty textured, so it takes a lot of paint. So let's think about, where do I want some waves? See, I even drug that down like that. That just made it flow right down there. So easy to do. Don't overthink it. Get some practice in on this. Now we can have some areas that aren't wavy, and the water is more still, I should say, if you want to get correct. So it doesn't all have to have white water, but let's get some in here in the foreground, right down to the canvas edge. That's running right off the canvas. Look at that. Whew. Man, you're going to have to put a bucket under this painting. I'm so enjoying this, y'all. I could do a little less in there. I need a little something right in there. Let me take the knife. So what I was saying earlier, we could do the same thing with a knife. I got a lot of color mixed in here, but that's okay. I'm just going to pull that in like that. Now I'm going to take it, just same deal, just lay it in there very gently so I'm not scraping all the paint right back off my canvas, and I just stick it in there. And then if you want to just pull another little something down like that, you can add a little more motion to it. But that is coming together. I got a little flick here. I don't know that that's really real, but here, get that off of there. Now, one thing I think I want to do is right here. Remember I talked about maybe another limb or two there, and then I said, yeah, maybe not, but I think I will. Now, I did destroy my tree color, but without even using a knife. I'm just going to grab some blue, some brown, some crimson. Don't need a lot of paint here. And some green, some yellow to make green. And that's probably pretty close to what I had. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So what I want to do is let this limb come out kind of over the river here a little bit. Like that. Maybe even up in here. Maybe I'll make this tree a little bigger. Yeah. On that side there. Nothing wrong with a lopsided tree. These are out here in the snow every year. They get snow covered and limbs break off. There. How's that? Now we're going to do a little bit of highlight, some green, and I believe we're just about there. So we can just take this color and grab some yellow and pull into it. I don't need to do all of it. I'm actually going to work right over here. Depending on how much highlight you want here as to how light you want this. See, I'm working with a dark color, so I'm going to try that. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going to hit some of these highlights on these trees over here. That's not real green. So what I'll do these over here on the right with this. But they don't need to be covered in highlights. Remember, it's a highlight. Now we can take a little more of this yellow, and I'm going to grab a little white here. You'll notice I'm just mixing with my brush, but I'm really getting down to the ends so I don't have to use my knife, and we don't need a lot of this. Now I'm going to add a lot of yellow in this. I'm getting a little pale looking. So there, I like that right there. Let's try that. Now I'm going to come in here and just highlight that little rascal there. Maybe a little bit right in here. We don't want a lot of highlights down here in the bottom, maybe right along in here because the sun's coming across and it might be hitting some of this. But down in here, we want to leave that dark. We're going to pull that again. And we'll take our brush and just, all I'm doing is using the corner of the brush. I'm not tapping really hard. The sun's coming from this way, so the majority of the highlights are on the left side of the tree. Are they all? No, there's a limb or two sticking out over here. But you don't want to cover the entire tree with highlights. And then as we come across here, you really don't have to do a whole lot over here. These trees are in shadow more, so we're just going to let them be that way. But that right there is pretty good. Now I've lost my trunk on that tree right there because of earlier we added some limbs to it, so I just caught that. So I'm just going to take this knife, get me a little trunk going back in here like we did before. And even over here, I've lost some of my trunk in this one. I may just add a little back into that, like that. Then we'll work our magic with the highlight brush now by just, again, knocking out some of the trunk. Not all of it, just a little of it. And let's take a look at that. Stand back and look at your creation. See if you like it. See if there's anything you'd want to do to it. But try not to just go crazy with it. I'm going to do a little bit more to my water. I don't want to get into the territory of killing my painting here. But I'd like to have a little more of a little white water back here. I'm just applying this paint right over the dark. I am not rubbing. If I did, I'd make mud right there. But that gives me a little bit more interest in this curve because this is coming down. So that water is going to be hitting the side of the river right there, and it's going to be breaking some waves there. There's going to be some white water in there. And then I believe I will take a little more right in here. Kind of the same deal here, like that. I want a lot of white water in the foreground, so I see I need a little more even over here. I want this to really pop down here in the front. I'm scooping that paint up. And right in here, where I had that flow earlier, I just want to add a little more white water to that. Okay, good. I do want to put a little highlight. I've still got green on my brush. I got to be careful. That's pretty bright. That's going to be too bright. Let me wipe that off. Or actually what I'll do, that's too bright. So I'm just going to pull back into this dark, shadowy color. And that's going to bring it down some. Grab a little more blue to bring it down further. I want a little highlight back here, but I don't want a lot, so I just want to tap a little something in here, like the sun is hitting right in here. This has got to be pretty subtle. I'm not tapping hard. I'm pretty soft here, and as you see, I'm going over it a lot to really soften it out even more. As it comes across, I'll just let it feather out to nothing. And then as it comes down here, I'm going to add a little bit darker right in there, maybe. Just a little bit. We'll grab some of this blue and a little brown and Alizarin Crimson. That's pretty dark, but I don't have to put much on. I'm just going to turn my brush sort of horizontally just to get me a little color in here. And then I can turn it vertical. I'm just applying some paint just to shadow that up a little right in there. Now that's not done. That's a little too harsh, right? But it's no problem. So I'm just going to wipe my brush out since I'm only working with a few brushes here. And then I'm just going to soften that up. Just taking the corner of that brush and just softening that out where it meets that highlight, and even down here toward the water, just so I can knock some of that off. It's a little too dark. But that is easy to take care of, isn't it? That is not a problem. Now as this comes across, I mean, if you wanted, you could tap a little in here, but you don't want to get over here in your fog. That's your mist off of the river. This, I'm going to take a little bit of white there on this brush without wiping it off again. I just want to brighten this back up a little. I don't like that. Just want to brighten it up a little right there. There. Just let that fog gently disappear as it comes over. It's not too harsh. Well, let's sign this and call it finished. You take your liner brush, dip it into some paint thinner, and find a color that's going to show up where you're going to sign it. I'm going to sign mine over here, lower left corner. So obviously this color wouldn't work. I'm going to go with some lighter blue. I think I'll just use this color I've got right here. I've got to get this thinned out. If I try to put this paint on with this brush straight off the palette, it's not going to work. So you can see it's running. Sorry, here it is. It's running down. That's about what I want. I want kind of an inky consistency. Now I'm going to have to put my palette down so I can just hold my arm up here. And I'm just going to go back to the palette and get some more paint. And there we go. Well, that's it. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to see more videos like this, click subscribe and the like button. I'd love to see your version of this, so if you want to contact me, you'll find the information below. I'm Dave June, and this is Learn to Paint.